For our group presentation, we watched the show All in the Family, and we watched the first episode and analyzed it together as a group. And then throughout this video, you will see how each of us analyzed a character in the show, demonstrated their identities and how those were applicable at the time when the show was aired, which was the 70s, and just how it affected the overall society at the time. This show was the first show of the time to really use comedy in a way to teach people how to treat other people. The show debuted on the channel CBS in the fall of 1971, and the show was basically to bring to light in a humorous spotlight and bring to attention the prejudices and the concerns that were going on in this time. The creator, Norman Lair, uses Archie, the main character, the father of the family, as almost a scapegoat to put all these things that America as a society was doing wrong into this one character. So even though the show was a comedy and a sitcom, it kind of brought to attention to a lot of people who were oblivious to the issues of the time, that these things were going on and that they weren't okay. The creator uses the son-in-law and the daughter to be examples of what is right and how we are to treat people. The show was extremely popular at the time. 60% of the population was tuning in and watching this show, so the show had a great effect on the population considering how many were watching. Although 60% of the population was watching this show, a lot of controversy came from it. People had issues with this show, even including President Nixon. He stated that he was not a fan of the show and that it went against his beliefs, but it did bring to light a lot of these situations, so thank you for watching.
The character that I'm analyzing the identity of is Archibald Bunker. Archibald Bunker is a middle-aged man. He's a white man. He's a heterosexual white man. He's American. He's middle class, a blue-collar worker, and he's a Christian, but he's a poor Christian in the sense that he doesn't really buy into the beliefs. He just kind of claims it as his own. We see Archibald demonstrate his Christianity in the sense that he goes to church with his wife, although very, very infrequently, and he disagrees with a lot of the opinions of his reverend, which he calls socialist propaganda, and that ties into how he demonstrates his class and his nationality. His class is middle class, and he's middle-aged, and he's American. So all these things, being in the 70s, growing up in the 40s and 50s, he has a disdain for communism. He has a disdain for communist, socialist, and left-wing politics. And this is all very the zeitgeist of when he grew up. We see him demonstrate his race, being a white man, how he treats people of other races, like the Jews. We see him treat them with disdain. He demonstrates to us that it was okay to do those things back then, being a white man. His opinions are kind of representative of the entire group of people. When we look back on those people, what we think about that they thought. The reason they're so important is because it demonstrates the friction between the children of the 60s and 70s and the people who grew up during the Red Scare. And the children of the 60s and 70s were much more open to communism and left-wing policies. And, they're free love, freewheeling kind of people. And then the friction between Archibald and his children who are like that, it kind of represents the friction between those two groups in society. I think the show demonstrates identity in the sense that showing you the extremes of identity and putting all these extremes in the same room with the communist children and the baby boomer dad and the black neighbors, and putting them all in this like sitcom setting, which allows you to kind of get a slice of life view and see like interactions between those different identities, just the interactions and how those identities clash and pull. And I think that's what's interesting about it and why it's a good look at identity.
Hey guys, I'm Albert and I'm going to be talking about Gloria. She's the daughter of Archie in the show. She would identify as a white female. The show shows us that she's heterosexual because she's married to Michael, and they show us that in episode 1. She would also identify as lower class because her and her husband still live in Gloria's parents' household. In the episode at least, the dad keeps on attacking Michael about hurry up and get a good job. They kind of show that the dad's frustrated with Michael and Gloria still living there. I feel like the show does a good job of showing identities. I mean, they show us that Gloria is a heterosexual, so is Archie. And they also do a good job of showing how Archie's a racist and has strong views that were more normal back then in the 1970s when the show was airing. And they also show that there was like a new wave, a new generation coming in, because they show like Gloria and Michael are already kind of arguing with Archie's beliefs and kind of showing them how it's like we need to be treating black people differently than how Archie believes they should be treated. Like Archie doesn't even know he's a racist. They do a good job of showing like that new waves coming in with like a different mindset and more of a belief that every man should be treated the same and have the same opportunity and the same American dream. So I feel like the show did a good job of showing identities and kind of just showing like the new wave, which was happening in the 1970s. There were still people with kind of more of a racist mindset, and there was the younger people kind of changing that out and clearing out and bringing in a new wave and a new belief.
In the show, All in the Family, I got the character Michael Stivic, who is a male, and the way he shows this is he feels the need to defend himself in every argument that he has with the main character, Archie. He's a Caucasian who's proud in his Polish heritage, and he's also heterosexual as he's married to Gloria Stivic, and he's very affectionate towards her. Out of everybody in the family, he's the most educated as he's trying to obtain a degree in sociology, which makes him a more open-minded person. And in the first episode, he admits he's not very religious as he tells Archie, the main character, that he doesn't find evidence of a god. This program was aired in the early 1970s to 80s, a time in which individuals of color were discriminated against. However, in relationship to his studies, Michael Stivic, being a Caucasian male, was able to overcome societal and racial biases and accept people regardless of their ethnic and or racial background. While watching the show, I was able to get an insight on various constructs of identity and how they are represented by the characters through their words, actions, and or thoughts.
I have Edith Bunker, wife of Archie Bunker, racially identified as a Caucasian American middle-aged woman who's heterosexually gendered. Edith Bunker, like Archie Bunker, is a middle class. Edith is Catholic, unlike Archie, who's Jewish Catholic, and has a disability of being naive. She's an airhead, in my opinion, in most situations. Most of the time it's on accident, but for sometimes she does that on purpose just to mess with Archie. I think that the programs show how loving, sassy, and naive Edith is. This program's important because back in the time of 1970s, where a whole time of controversial acts were going on, like the civil rights movement and everything, many people had different opinions, like how Michael and Archie did at the dinner table on the very first episode, and how they didn't agree with each other.